I just finished Immigrant Montana, so let's talk about that. I think that this is going to be less a review and more just a discussion on the book or general thoughts about it, especially about the writing. And not like the grammar and the syntax and the sentence structure and whatever, but a broader look at how it was written and how it was put together, which I thought was really, really interesting. When I first picked up this book, I think I kind of assumed, I mean, it does say it's a novel, but when I started reading it, I kind of thought it was more of a memoir. And then it hit me that the main character's name and the author's name are not the same. So it can't just be a memoir, but that's the style that it's written in. So I went and did a little bit of research and found out that it is a memoir, but it's a fictionalized memoir, which I think is such a cool concept. I had not read a book like this before, which apparently is called an autofiction. There is a term for it. So I learned something new reading this. And I don't know, I thought it was so very cool. I really love memoirs, and so reading a fictionalized memoir was just a very cool experience to me. It definitely took me a while to read it. I was like racing through it for the first third, and then I kind of slowed down and had a harder time like sitting down and reading it. And I'm not really sure why. I think it just started to lose me. It's more of a literary book than I normally read. I'm not a literary critic. Like, I don't delve into the hidden themes in books and, you know, what the author is trying to say with it. And like, I don't read like that. And so I think this book kind of deserves that kind of reading and that kind of thought. And I'm not the person for that, unfortunately. So I enjoyed it as a novel and I enjoyed it as a memoir. And that's about as deep as my thoughts go on this for now. I did do a little bit of research after reading it, and I read like a more literary review of it. And I would love to find more critical thoughts on it. But for me, I just thought it was a really, really cool way to write a novel. And there's a lot about how it's written and how it's put together that is very cool beyond it being an autofiction. So I'll just talk about some of the elements in it that I thought were awesome and that I'd love to include in a novel someday. So the first thing I want to talk about is the footnotes. There are footnotes in this novel, and I love footnotes in a novel, especially a fictionalized novel. The only other time that I've seen that done was in the Lake of the Woods, and that was just, it was so cool. If you haven't read that book, I do recommend it. It's a mystery that never really gets solved. It's a mystery, and the way it's written is from the viewpoint of this man who's trying to figure out the mystery and to solve it and figure out what happened. So in the book, there are sections that are like his interviews with people who knew the main character and knew everybody involved. So he interviews these people as like character witnesses kind of, and then he imagines how certain things might have gone, you know, like what happened to the missing person or what was going through the mind of the main character. So like we have different scenes and he'll repeat the same scenes with variations and be like, maybe it happened this way, but maybe it also happened this way. We don't really know. And then there are lots of footnotes included also. And I really, really loved that detail. I love the footnotes. So I think that's so much fun in a novel. It makes it feel a lot more real and a lot more like nonfiction, but you know that it's fiction. It's very fictionalized. So In the Lake of the Woods was a great example of that. Immigrant Montana is the second time that I've seen that done. So there are just footnotes all throughout it. And I marked this footnote in particular because it is talking about Agnes Smedley's novel, Daughter of Earth, which apparently was also an autofiction. And I haven't looked up anything in this yet to see what was real and what wasn't. I need to do that at some point. But the last two lines of this footnote are as follows. Her book is neither a memoir nor simply a novel. And when I read it, I thought Smedley offered us a model for writing. I was like, that's what he did. And that comes in at like almost 200 pages into the book. He writes this and says, this was kind of inspiration for this novel. And I just thought that was really, really cool to include. But he talks about a couple different autofictions in this novel, which I thought was very cool. Just like, you know, that's what this book is an autofiction, and here are other examples that kind of influenced his writing of this book. So footnotes are a very cool addition to that. I guess as far as mixing fiction with nonfiction, I have read one other book that does that, and that was The Old Drift. In that's a magical realism book, which was the first and possibly only magical realism I've read. There's some debate on that. The other book that possibly would be magical realism was, is it The Lake at the End of the Road? I'll have to find the title and put it in here. But it's by Neil Gaiman, and I read it for class, and we were supposed to view it as magical realism, and I think it's more fantasy than magical realism. I think it's fantasy just set in modern day, which isn't done often, and so that makes it look like magical realism and like it's not fantasy, but in my opinion it was more fantasy than anything. But anyway, The Old Drift also mixes fiction and nonfiction in a very cool way. But yeah, so I love the footnotes. I love the mix of fiction and nonfiction. Another unique aspect of the writing is that the narrator slash main character, it's written as like the narrator from years later reflecting on his life and reflecting on the relationships he had and the things he learned and the similarities and differences between his life in India and then his life in the United States. And in that, sometimes he will break into these like imaginary courtroom scenes where he is speaking as an immigrant in the United States to a white judge. And he's justifying his place in America and the things that he's doing and the thoughts that he has, and he's like justifying it to this imaginary judge. And so those sections were really cool too. I thought it was a very cool way to write a novel. So again, I don't really have a whole review of this book. I don't have thoughts on like the plot, because there isn't really a plot because it's written as a memoir. And like a memoir is not, you know, here's this thing that happened, here's the inciting incident, here's this, you know, the journey, the hero's journey, whatever. Memoir is just, here's my life and what shaped me and some interesting points in my life. And so that's kind of what it is. And again, you could go deeper with the literary criticism and talk about the themes and whatever. I am not going to do that. I am not the person for that. Because it does have like the common thread. I guess the common thread in it is love and his search for love. But, you know, that is a common theme in it. But as far as like the hero's journey plot, I don't really think that there is one necessarily. It just goes from his different relationships and then pulls out like what he learned and how that shaped him. So I wasn't really sure I was going to keep it after reading it, just because I don't really think I'll read it again. I did really enjoy the style, and it has introduced me to this new genre in fiction. But then towards the end, I started tapping it and finding lines that I liked and different like thoughts that I liked. So I will be keeping it for now, at least until I can like mark those down. I'm not getting rid of it because I hated it or something. I have a bad habit of hoarding books, and this is one that I think I could let go of and pass on to somebody else who would enjoy it also. So I might eventually unhaul it, but for now, until I write down all these different sections that I've marked, I will be keeping it. If you want to read it yourself, here's a bit of a content guide. There is a lot of language in it and a lot of sexual content that I do wish was not in it. So I guess proceed with caution in that realm. And it deals with some heavy topics also. I guess that's my little book discussion. So that's basically all that I have for this video and for my thoughts on Immigrant Montana. If you've read it, let me know your thoughts. If you've read other autofiction, please give me recommendations down below. I will be searching more into this genre. I will not be purchasing anything until I have made a bigger dent in my physical TBR, but I look forward to finding more books like this and, I don't know, getting my hands on those someday and like delving into this genre a little bit more. Also, footnotes in novels. More fiction writers need to do that because it's so much fun. And I personally know someone who is doing that, and I'm so excited for him to someday like finish this work and publish it, and for me to be able to just like pick it up and read it. And it's fantasy. It's like completely fictionalized fantasy, and he's putting footnotes, and it is so, so good. Yeah, so I really love that. I think that's a really fun thing to do in novels. And I know some people like hate footnotes, but I don't know. I find it cool because like in textbooks when there are footnotes, it's always something boring that you don't want to read. But in a novel, when it's carefully crafted and part of the story, it makes it so exciting. Like you see a footnote and you're like, ooh, okay, what's the footnote about? What does it connect to? What is it saying? And it makes it like very interesting to read. So anyway, big fan of footnotes. And what do we think of the new setup? I don't know if this is where I will continue to film videos. Maybe I'll do little like book chats like this every once in a while and film them here as opposed to like my normal background. I don't know. This is just easier because I have an actual chair, which I don't have a chair at my other setup just because I can't get like the right height chair, and then I can't get the tripod at the right height, and like it's just, I don't know, my shelf is too tall and my chairs are all too small. I do generally like sit on a stool there, but that's not the most comfortable, so I kind of like having a chair, and I do still sort of have books in here and like my little shelf, so maybe we'll see more videos from this perspective. I don't know. It's just nice to have options and to have like an actual tripod set up, so I might do this from now on. We'll see. But also let me know what you think of like the book chats. Should I do more just kind of, you know, very quick thoughts on a certain part of a book instead of doing like a full review? Because as much as I like doing the full reviews, I've read a couple books lately where I don't really have a lot to say about the book as a whole, or like each little section of it. I guess I have thoughts on the book as a whole, or like a one part of it, but I don't have thoughts on like the plot and the characters and whatever else, and so then I don't end up doing a video, and I would like to still talk about the books that I'm reading. So yeah, so maybe I'll do more like this. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And now for like the actual outro. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave it a like and subscribe and comment down below. You know, I've given options for comments, but I love having conversations. I've had some really good conversations with people in the comments lately, and I would just love to continue that and to get to know some of y'all and know your likes and dislikes in books and your thoughts on different things. And I will see you in the next video. So have a blessed day, everyone. Bye-bye.